What if the real danger in life isn't the storms you face, but the subtle poisons you tolerate every day? Have you ever wondered why you feel drained, disconnected, or hollow without knowing exactly why? The truth is, what you accept repeatedly doesn't just shape your days, it quietly reshapes your soul. These aren't just bad habits or external pressures, they are invisible chains. In the Stoic way of life, clarity begins when we recognize what is slowly destroying us. And today, we will reveal 7 of the most dangerous behaviors that silently erode your soul. There is a weight you carry every day, but you don't talk about it. It's not exhaustion, it's not stress, it's the quiet pain of allowing too much for too long. You've said yes when you wanted to say no. You've laughed at insults disguised as jokes. You've explained yourself to people who never cared to understand. And now you feel hollow, not broken, just disconnected from who you were before. All the swallowing, all the shrinking. You start to wonder, is this normal? Is it me? Am I too sensitive number? You're not sensitive. You're waking up. A Stoic does not tolerate what poisons the soul. Not because it's dramatic, not because it hurts, but because tolerating it slowly erases who you are. This isn't just about others. It's about you, what you've accepted, what you've justified, what you've betrayed. Inside yourself today, you'll see it clearly, 7 behaviors, 7 slow deaths, and if you truly want peace, you must face them and choose to stop. When love is a chain, it never looks like manipulation. At first, it looks like care, it sounds like love. I'm just worried about you. I'm saying this for your own good. If you really cared about me, you'd do this. But a Stoic sees beneath the surface. Because when someone constantly frames your choices as threats to their emotions, what they're doing isn't loving you, they're controlling you. And it's subtle. They don't scream, they don't demand, they guilt you into obedience. They pull the strings while keeping their hands clean. And the worst part, you defend them. You tell yourself they mean well. But what you're really doing is handing over your freedom in exchange for approval that was never freely given. A Stoic draws the line early. Why? Because once someone starts distorting your sense of right and wrong to serve their needs, your reason, the very thing Stoicism defends above all, is under attack. Marcus Aurelius warned the things you think about determine the quality of your mind, your soul takes on the color of your thoughts, and if your thoughts are constantly clouded with fear, guilt, or confusion brought on by someone else's manipulation, what becomes of your mind? You become hesitant, you stop trusting your instincts, you second guess every decision, you shrink not out of wisdom, but out of programmed compliance, and this is where many lose themselves. They confuse peace with silence, they confuse love with fear, they start to believe that being constantly corrected, redirected, and emotionally tugged in every direction is normal, even noble. It is not. Epictetus made it clear, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. But if someone else is defining what is acceptable for you to think, feel, or choose, how much freedom do you really have? Let's be brutally honest. If you need someone's permission to live in alignment with your values, you're not in a relationship, you're in a cage. And most of these cages are built from soft words and warm gestures. That's what makes them so dangerous. You don't realize you're trapped until the door has already closed. So here's your Stoic test. Can you say no without fear? Can you disagree without being punished emotionally? Can you make decisions without carrying the guilt someone else placed on your back? If not, you're being manipulated, and it doesn't matter how gentle. It looks manipulation. Dressed as love is still manipulation. And a Stoic never trades his autonomy for affection. Let them call you cold, let them say you've changed, let them accuse you of being distant or selfish. It is better to be alone in truth than surrounded in falsehood. Because once you surrender your reason, your ability to see clearly dies. With it, you don't owe anyone access to your inner world, unless they respect the boundary between influence and intrusion. A Stoic chooses clarity over comfort. Always they laugh. Everyone laughs except you, because deep down you know that joke wasn't innocent, that comment wasn't harmless, that smile carried a blade. This is how mockery works. It hides behind humor. It disguises humiliation as entertainment. And if you protest, you become too sensitive, no fun, or the one who can't take a joke. This is not comedy. This is psychological warfare dressed in a smile. And yet most people tolerate it. Why? Because silence is safer. Because laughter is easier than confrontation. Because no one wants to be the person who ruins the mood. But here's what a Stoic knows. Every time you allow yourself to be made small, in the name of belonging, you betray your dignity. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the approval of others. Don't let that control you. It's not who you are. Mockery may not leave bruises, but it leaves scars, invisible ones that erode self. Respect, over time, you sit at the table, you hear the jab, you laugh along, and yet something dies in you each time that something is called your self-worth. A Stoic sees this for what it is, not harmless play, but symbolic violence. It establishes a hierarchy where your discomfort is the punchline, where your silence becomes permission. And here's the truth. People won't say aloud. Those who mock the most are often the most insecure. They use others as shields to avoid looking inward. They project their own inadequacies by tearing others down with clever phrasing and a rehearsed smirk. But a Stoic refuses to be their target, because a Stoic knows if someone must step on your pride to feel tall, they were never standing to begin with. So what should you do? Don't match their sarcasm. Don't retaliate with bitterness, withdraw your participation. You don't have to fight them. You simply refuse to play their game. You respond not with anger, but with absence, with calm, with the unshakable look of someone who knows their worth cannot be dented by a weak man's joke. Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor, and mockers crave something. Attention, control, power. Your discomfort feeds them, starve them. Remember this, you were not born to be the subject of someone else's entertainment. You don't exist to be the clown in another man's circus, and you don't owe anyone your silence when your soul is under attack. So the next time the laughter fades and the joke hangs in the air, don't explain yourself. Don't justify your pain. Stand tall, walk away if you must, but never ever laugh when what's being killed is your self-respect. Because for the Stoic, nothing, not even acceptance, is worth the price of your dignity. It starts with a small comment that never happened. You're overreacting. You always make things more dramatic than they are. You hesitate just for a moment. Did I misremember that? Am I being too emotional? Maybe it wasn't that bad. And just like that, you begin to doubt the one thing a Stoic guards above all your perception. This is gaslighting, and it doesn't need shouting. It works in whispers, in shrugs, in carefully planted seeds of doubt. It's not meant to defeat you through force. It's meant to make you dismantle yourself from within. And the terrifying part is, it works. Because once you start questioning your own memory, your own emotions, your own reality, you stop trusting yourself. And when that happens, they've won. A Stoic understands that reality may be painful, but clarity is never the enemy. Confusion is, Seneca wrote, if you live in harmony with nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to opinion, you will never be rich. Gaslighting feeds on opinion, yours and theirs. It needs you to surrender truth in exchange for comfort, for peace, for someone else's version of events. But the Stoic lives in truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is. You must learn to spot the signs when someone makes you feel guilty for remembering something that hurt you, when your emotional response is treated like a flaw rather than a signal, when your mind becomes a battlefield and the enemy hides behind concern. Do not be fooled. This isn't a disagreement. This is invasion. An attempt to colonize your inner world and rewrite your truth. The moment you no longer trust your own judgment, you become dependent on theirs. And that's exactly what they want. Not to love you, but to own you. Epictetus warned, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. But what if they steal your ability to even recognize what happened? This is not a game. Gaslighting is psychological sabotage, and its goal is simple: to make you question everything except their authority. So what must the Stoic do? Return to what is objective. What did you feel in that moment? What did you see? What did you hear? The Stoic doesn't need validation from the manipulator. The Stoic trusts their reason not perfectly but vigilantly. And if someone constantly demands that you rewrite your memories to match their comfort, walk away not because they're evil, but because they are dangerous to your mind. Because if you lose your grasp on what is real, you become a prisoner, not just of them, but of your own doubt. And that is the deepest prison of all. Protect your perception, defend your clarity. You can be wrong, but you must never be unsure of your right to see, because the Stoic's mind is a fortress and gaslighting is a thief that smiles while stealing your map to reality. You open up, you speak honestly, you say what hurt, what felt wrong, what stayed with you longer than it should have, and they dismiss it. You're too sensitive, you're overthinking it. It's not that deep. You're just being dramatic. They say it casually, like they're doing you a favor by telling you not to feel so much. But what they're really doing is something far more destructive. They are training you to distrust your inner world. A Stoic doesn't chase emotional validation, but a Stoic also doesn't allow others to trample over their inner signals in the name of logic or normality. Because while the Stoic strives to master emotions, he first listens to them. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity for." He is not permitted to prove himself. Emotions, especially discomfort, are signs of internal friction. Invitations to examine something deeper. To dismiss them entirely is to silence your soul. And the one who teaches you to silence yourself is not helping you grow. They're helping you disappear over time. You begin to swallow pain without protest. You stop expressing what's real to you. You start thinking, maybe I am being too much. And just like that, you begin shrinking to fit into a version of yourself that causes the least disturbance. But here's the Stoic truth. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of clarity. And clarity demands that you honor what you feel, even if others choose to dismiss it. Let's be clear. Emotional invalidation is not tough love. It's not rational feedback. It's a slow erasure of your right to experience the world honestly. And those who do it often wear the mask of logic, of practicality. They'll say things like, "You're always so emotional, you just want attention. It's not about you," but every time you're made to feel ashamed for simply feeling a part of your inner compass is demagnetized. Eventually, you no longer know what deserves a response. You lose the ability to tell when something is truly wrong, because you've been taught to filter everything through someone else's threshold for discomfort. The Stoic path is not emotionless. It is emotion governed by virtue, and virtue begins with acknowledging what exists you can't master, what you've never allowed yourself to fully recognize. So what must you do? Stop explaining your emotions to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. Speak truthfully even when it's uncomfortable, and if someone refuses to hold space for your reality, you hold that space for yourself with strength, not apology. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts and the thoughts you think about yourself. Begin with how you treat your own pain. If you keep silencing your emotions to make others comfortable, you don't become stronger, you become numb. And numbness is not resilience, it's spiritual atrophy. The Stoic knows feel deeply, then act wisely, but never let anyone convince you that feeling itself is weakness. Because if they can invalidate your emotions long enough, eventually they will invalidate your existence. They don't yell, they don't insult you, they don't even say a word. Instead, they vanish, not physically, emotionally, psychologically. They withdraw their presence like a weapon. You send a message and it gets ignored. You walk into the room and they look through you. You try to explain, to reconnect, to make things right, and they give you nothing. This is not miscommunication. This is intentional punishment through silence. It's the cold, calculated move of someone who wants you to feel small, invisible, dependent. And for many it works, because human beings crave connection. We long for acknowledgement. And when that's taken away without explanation, we don't just feel confused, we feel worthless. The Stoic, however, sees this for what it is, emotional manipulation in its most cowardly form. Because real strength doesn't hide. Real virtue doesn't need to punish through withdrawal. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. But if someone else's silence has the power to unravel you, Your mind is not your own silence. Contempt is dangerous because it doesn't just create distance, it creates doubt. You begin to question everything. What did I do wrong? Why won't they talk to me? Maybe I deserve this. And slowly you internalize their silence as proof of your unworthiness. That is the trap. Because once you accept this treatment, you become trained to chase scraps of attention, to adjust your behavior, to avoid exile, to live on edge, constantly wondering when the next freeze out will come. But a Stoic never begs for acknowledgement. We do not fear being alone. We fear being enslaved by affection that must be purchased with self-abandonment. The one who uses silence to control is not mature. They are manipulative. And when you respond by groveling for closure, you reinforce their illusion of power. Here is the Stoic response. Let them be silent, but do not let that silence dictate your worth. You do not chase what walks away in arrogance. You do not lose sleep over those who find comfort in making you feel unseen. Seneca reminds us, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. And one of the hardest lessons is this. Sometimes the cruelest people never raise their voice. They just lower your sense of value. You must recognize that, not with bitterness, not with rage, but with unwavering clarity. If someone cannot communicate with you directly, they are not worthy of your vulnerability. If someone needs to disappear in order to feel powerful, they were never strong to begin with. A Stoic does not tolerate being erased. He remains rooted in truth regardless of who withdraws, because real connection is built on honesty, not manipulation through silence. So the next time you're met with that cold distance, remember this: their silence is not your mirror. It is their weakness speaking, not your value diminishing. You've been told it your whole life. Be selfless. Put others first. Give without expecting anything in return. Sacrifice is noble. Sacrifice is love. And you believed it. So you gave and gave and gave until there was almost nothing left of you. But here's the truth. The world rarely says out loud sacrifice. When done without wisdom, becomes self-erasure. This isn't generosity. This is slow suicide of the soul. A Stoic understands that virtue requires balance, that love, duty, and compassion must be offered from strength, not depletion. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do not confuse yourself by thinking that self-sacrifice is always noble. What matters is whether it aligns with reason, virtue, and justice." There's a quiet danger in the way society celebrates selflessness. It sounds good, it looks holy, but when you dig deeper, you often find people bleeding in silence, applauded for their silence, admired for their endurance, and forgotten for their humanity. You cook the meals, you stay up late, you say yes to every request, you carry burdens that aren't yours, and when you finally collapse, no one notices because your suffering was never loud enough to be seen as a problem. The Stoic sees this trap and steps out of it, because a Stoic doesn't give to be admired and he doesn't give to be emptied. He gives when it aligns with nature, when it nourishes both the other and the self. If you sacrifice your time, your voice, your needs just to avoid conflict or earn approval, you are not being virtuous. You are being afraid, afraid to disappoint, afraid to be seen as selfish, afraid to ask, when is it my turn? But here's the thing, perpetual sacrifice is not sustainable. And when you build your identity around always being the one who gives, who bends, who stays, who absorbs, you lose sight of your core. Seneca warned us, no man can live a happy life or even a supportable life without the study of wisdom. And the first part of wisdom is to know your limits. Do you know yours? Because without boundaries, there is no love. Only quiet resentment wearing a mask of devotion. Let's be clear. Saying no does not make you heartless. Choosing rest does not make you lazy. Refusing to carry someone else's weight does not make you cruel. It makes you awake. The Stoic doesn't flinch at being misunderstood for protecting his time and energy. He knows that giving without measure is not generosity. It is abandonment of duty to self. So take a breath and ask yourself honestly, am I serving from strength or from fear, from virtue or from habit? Because if your sacrifices leave you feeling hollow, invisible, and quietly angry, they are no longer acts of love. They are cries for help. And the Stoic knows you cannot lift others while you're crumbling inside. Give with wisdom, help with boundaries, love without vanishing, because disappearing for others is not love. It's self-neglect. You didn't start here. You didn't wake up one day and say, I'll settle for less than I deserve. It was gradual. After all the manipulation, the mockery, the silence, the invalidation, after all the bending and sacrificing, you began to believe a lie far more dangerous than all the others. Maybe this is all I'm worth. So you stayed, you accepted the coldness, the distance, the subtle jabs, the indifference, because being ignored felt better than being alone, because crumbs of attention felt better than none, because you feared the silence of solitude more than the noise of degradation. But a Stoic knows to accept contempt as the price of belonging is to abandon the self. This is not humility. This is self-erasure in disguise. Seneca wrote, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. He did not say stay with those who diminish you, so you won't be alone. And yet many do, because walking away means facing the void, and the void is terrifying. But here's what you must remember. The void is not your enemy self. Betrayal is when you allow someone to look at you with disdain and still hold their hand. When you make excuses for why they constantly overlook, ignore, or disrespect you, you are not being loyal. You are being afraid to face the silence, afraid to rebuild, afraid to meet yourself without their presence to define you. But this fear is a cage, and every day you stay in it, you reinforce the belief that love must be earned through suffering. The Stoic rejects this completely, Marcus Aurelius said. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your thoughts are soaked in shame, unworthiness, and desperation, your soul will carry those colors until it forgets its true shade. Contempt is a slow poison. It tells you are lucky, I even tolerate you, you're hard to love, you're not worth more than this. And the longer you accept it, the more believable it becomes, until one day you no longer fight back, you no longer ask for more, you no longer remember what it felt like to be whole. This is what the Stoics called psychic death, the extinguishing of the self, but you can reverse it right now, not by demanding others change, but by refusing to keep drinking from a poisoned well. Solitude is hard, yes, but it is in solitude that the Stoic finds truth. It is there that you remember who you are without distortion. Without permission, without fear, you were not born to beg for affection. You were not made to endure quiet humiliation just to avoid empty spaces. You are here to live aligned with virtue, even if it means standing alone, because nothing, absolutely nothing, is worth trading your self-respect. And the moment you stop accepting contempt, you stop surviving and start living now. You've seen it, not with rose-colored lenses, not with excuses or justifications, but with clarity. 7 behaviors, 7 poisons, 7 ways you were slowly trained to abandon yourself. Not because you were weak, but because no one taught you the cost of tolerating what chips away at your soul. The Stoics never promised an easy life, but they offer something far more valuable. A life lived in alignment with truth. And that truth is this: what you accept repeatedly becomes who you are. What you justify becomes your identity. And what you allow becomes your cage. So now comes the real test. Will you go back to your old patterns? Will you excuse the next manipulation, the next silence, the next betrayal of your dignity? Or will you choose something harder but cleaner, the courage to walk alone, the strength to say no more, the wisdom to protect your soul before your silence becomes your funeral? Remember, virtue requires boundaries. Not because you're unkind, but because you finally understand your value. If this message lit something inside you, don't let it fade. Act on it, speak differently, stand differently, live like someone who has remembered their worth. Because once you wake up, you never sleep again.